my friends, it's Rebekah, and today in Bible Ladies Brunch Bunch, I'm going to share with you the story of Sarah and a yummy recipe for French toast cups that you can serve right now. I'll see you in a minute. Hello my friends, it's Rebekah, and I am glad you're joining us this morning. Generally, if you are one of my ladies from my church, you would know that on Wednesdays we have been in the habit, pre-corona, of meeting around my dining room table for a Bible study every Wednesday. And I usually fix some kind of good, yummy, brunch, breakfast kind of dish, and we enjoy some fellowship and also studying the Word. We've done lots of different studies, and I thought it would be fun to start recording some of these Bible studies for you. Just here, me in my dining room, maybe just my cat. What are you talking about? My cat. Goodness gracious! Other interesting tidbits. What are you doing? You can't see her here, but she's. Let's see if we can see her here. See how pretty she is. See how pretty she is. She's a talker. I thought it would be fun to start recording some of these so we can gather anyway, and we can invite all of you to come along with us. I am a pastor's wife. Used to be homeschool teacher. We actually graduated ours this past summer. And a sometimes writer, sometimes blogger, all of the things above. So, good times, good times. Anyway, I thought that would be fun to do this. A couple of things before we get started. We are going to study, this particular series is going to be Women in the Bible. I'm going to choose 8 to study along, so this will take us about 8 weeks to go through. You can find us a new video every Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock on all of the locations that I post things. So if you are finding this, I guarantee you can go next Wednesday and I will be here again with another story for you. So a couple of things about our study. I am going to be reading primarily out of the King James Version. It is not my reading version of choice if I'm doing a study, but I love to read it out loud. I think it reads like an epic Shakespearean play or something, which is apropos considering the time it was translated in. But as far as a study Bible, my study Bible is the Life of the Spirit Study Bible. It is an NIV version, and I've had this one quite a while. But I want to show you my true love right now, has been for a number of years, and that is my YouVersion app. Yes, sirree, Bob. It's my YouVersion app. And it allows me to, you can see this is the, it's the Ephesians was the last chapter I was reading in. It gives a plan, has plans on them that you can go through. There's devotions with them or a reading plan that you can kind of stay on track with. It keeps track for you. So all sorts of things, little videos. You can highlight things. Make prayer lists, and I'm going to show what it looks like on my phone. It looks like that. So if you want it, I would recommend getting something like that. I use this a lot in church because otherwise I must read with these. And I think these are as old as the hills, these granny glasses. They're probably my mother's, who she buys them at the Dollar Tree. And has them all over her house, and I think she's gifted me with a pair of few when she saw me reading like this, because I am very nearsighted. So anyway, so let's get started. We're going to talk about Sarah today. As I said, I'm going to share with you a yummy recipe for French toast cups, and so that'll be to come. If you want I've got some goodies for you on my blog. There is a couple of sheets that can help you when you study the Bible. It has a little box for the scripture references, key verses that stand out to you, some kind of note taking little box, and also a box that helps you think about how you're going to apply what you've read. And also there's a journaling page excuse me, for more notes, or if you want to use it to write your scripture out. All of those, they're really pretty and feminine, and they are available to you on my blog, along with a recipe I'm going to share, and also a set of scripture cards that you can print off and keep in your Bible. I enjoy making those, and I've made quite a few sets. This is one I've done, and I just like to share those things. So let's get started with this stuff. As I said, I'm going to be reading out of Genesis. We're going to start in chapter 11. Now, Genesis is the first book of the Bible. I believe there is not a clear writer. We understand that could be a variety of people, but we believe that it's Moses. He wrote the first 5 books of the Bible, which is called the Pentateuch. And Genesis gives the account of creation, the story of Noah, and the story of the Tower of Babel, and also quite a bit of genealogy. You'll notice in the Bible there's lots of genealogy, lots of, who begat who and who came from who. And that helps us understand the genealogy from such and such, which would be Abraham, to Jesus Christ. Now, as a Christian, I believe that Jesus is the Messiah. He's the Son of God. He was born from a virgin. He was crucified, died for our sins, and he rose again. And so that is our story. And so we're going to look at, of course, the scriptures that we read through that lens. We're going to know that is the end result. And of course, there'll be some ladies from the Bible that are going to be featured that are from the New Testament. So we'll discuss those books when we get to it. I'm also going to provide for you'll see a couple of maps maybe come in and out, kind of help us with our location, with our geography. And I'm also going to be featuring some beautiful classic art from time to time. I'll try and attribute the artist every time I share one, but just know that these paintings look very much like Renaissance women. They're white and voluptuous and wearing gowns, and we know that Abraham's wife Sarah was a beautiful woman, but she most likely was a woman of color, little tan, little dark, and she probably wasn't dressed in a ball gown. So, but this is beautiful art, and I thought it would be wonderful to share it with you. So, are you ready? You can get your notebook, get your printed off little pages I gave to you. You can write down anything that's interesting to you, anything that speaks to your heart, and we will get started. So we're going to start in chapter 11, and we're going to go, you can see that the Tower of Babel, this is the story of the Tower of Babel, and at verse 10, it talks about Shem. Shem is one of Noah's son, and this says this is the account of Shem. And then we start going through all of the genealogy. We see a lot of names we cannot pronounce, at least I cannot pronounce with my state college education. But towards the end of that chapter, in verse 27, it says, this is the account of Terah. Now, Terah was Abram's father. And so we read farther, and we see Abram's brothers and where they moved from. They were originally from the Ur of the Chaldeans, which is, I believe, in present-day Iraq. And so they moved from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to the land of Canaan, but when they stopped on the way at a city called Haran, and Abram's father died, and Abram's remaining living brother, stayed there. So in chapter 12, we see the call of Abram. It says, God calls Abram. The Lord had said to Abram, go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you I will curse, and all peoples of the earth will be blessed through you. And it says so. So Abram went. He went. His nephew Lot went with him, and of course Abram took all of his peoples. We know that Abram was well-to-do. He was influential in his area, in his time, but he was a faithful servant of God. And so God says, listen, I want you to pick up your stuff. I want you to gather all your peoples around, and I want you to go. And I want you to go to this land of Canaan. Obviously, this was a place, the Bible doesn't say that, Abram had traveled there before. He was just going to go. It wasn't something they had to think about. They didn't have to put their house on the market. They didn't have to, register any kids from school. They just picked up and went. Now, something we need to rewind back into chapter 11. It says now in verse 30, now Sarai was childless because she was not able to conceive. So she was, in that day and time, even more so than today, to be childless, to have your womb empty, or to be barren was just a great shame. I have some personal experience with barrenness, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But let's consider this. God's going to give Abram a promise, and you're going to see from these passages that lots of stuff's going to happen. Sarah's going to take matters into her own hand, but consider the promise that God has given Abram. So he's saying, go out, I'm going to bless you, and your peoples are going to be blessing, and I'm going to make you into a great nation. Now, we understand that this nation was going to become from Abraham's seed. It was going to become from it was going to come from his family line. So it talks about they left Haran and they went to the land of Canaan. And when they arrived there, and he built an altar, but then a famine came into the land. Some rough times were ahead. That's a good point to think about, that God has this plan for Abram, and he says, go and I want you to go to Canaan. I want you to take all your people there. Even though God gives us a promise, even though God has a promise, doesn't mean that there aren't going to be hardships along the way. They're not going to be famines. They're not going to be just dryness and desert in between. So just because there is a promise doesn't mean it's guaranteed happiness. It's not going to be easy breezy. And we're going to find that out. So in verse 12, we'll get to in chapter 12, we're going to get to verse 10. It says, now there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to live there for a while because the famine was severe. As he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, I know what a beautiful woman you are. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife, and then they will kill me, but will let you live. Say you're my sister, so that I will be treated well. So I'm missing my page. I think I missed a page out of my Bible. There we go. Anyway, where did it go? There's two. Is that it? No, that's the wrong one. Okay. So when Abram came to Egypt, the Egyptians saw that Sarai was a very beautiful woman. And when Pharaoh's officials saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and she was taken to his palace. He treated Abram well for her sake. And Abram acquired sheep and cattle and male and female donkeys, male and female servants, and camels. But the Lord inflicted serious diseases on Pharaoh and his household because of Abram's wife, Sarai. So Pharaoh summoned Abram and said, "What have you done to me?" He said. Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister so that I took her to be my wife? Now then, here's your wife. Take her and go." So then Pharaoh gave orders about Abram to his men, and they sent him away on his way, and his wife and everything he had. Now, Genesis, well, let's just be honest about this. The Bible has lots of twisty stories. And of course, God uses human people. We're human, and we can be kind of twisty. So basically, they're worried. Pharaoh's worried. Sarah's a beautiful woman. Now, I'm not sure how old she was at this time. Maybe in her 80s. Not quite sure. But can you imagine? But she's a beautiful woman. And Abram says, "Look, you're really pretty. And I'm afraid that when we get to Egypt, the Pharaoh will see you and he'll say, 'Oh, she's pretty,' and he'll kill me and take you as his wife, and I don't want to die," which is understandable. Now, there are a lot of takes on this story. There are a lot of people that believe that Abram wasn't lying, that really Sarah was his sister, or she was his cousin or a niece or whatever it was. Later we know in Leviticus that God commands us not to marry people we're related to in that fashion. There's no incest involved, no incest allowed. And so not quite sure. I certainly believe that Abram told a lie of omission. He wasn't clear about that. And I also believe that kind of act wasn't a great act of trust. But we do that. God gives us a promise. God gives us direction. God gives us something to do, and we go for it wholeheartedly. But with other things in our lives, we cannot trust God with that part of our lives. So, as a woman, this is all kind of ickiness. Not for the fact that he treated her as a wife, and we're not sure what that involves. But the fact that Abram was her protector, and I don't know. It's just all sorts of icky. It just shows us that God takes our mess. He takes our mess, and he sent the plagues to Pharaoh, and oh my word. Anyway, so let's move on. There's some stuff in there in between after this that you might read about. Interesting stuff. Well, we're going to move on to Hagar, and we're going to move on to Sarah's little plan. And this is in, I don't know if these are going to work. This is in Genesis 16. Said, now Sarai, Abram's wife, no, that doesn't do any good. Mom, I need some more granny glasses. Had borne him no children, but she had an Egyptian slave named Hagar. And so she said to Abram, "The Lord kept me from having children. Go sleep with my slave, and perhaps I can build a family through her. And Abram agreed to what Sarai said. That is also kind of icky for us. That whole notion, slavery and blah, 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 and her claiming that slave's child, Hagar's child, as her own. That was a common practice. But ignoring God's promise, Sarah got tired of waiting, which is understandable, took matters into her own hands, and she took her Egyptian slave Hagar, gave her to her husband to be his wife. He slept with Hagar, and she conceived. And when she knew she was pregnant, she began to despise her mistress. That's you can see all sorts of wrongness happening. Of course, maybe it's because she felt like an elevated position was hers, and there was some tension there. It could have been that maybe, who knows? Who knows? It just got nasty, and I can't imagine that working out at all. Can you? So we're on we're in verse 5 of chapter 16. Then Sarai said to Abram, "You are responsible for the wrong I am suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and now she knows she's pregnant. She despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me." Oh. Well, and then Abram says, "Your slave is in your hands. Do with her whatever you think is best." And then Sarai mistreated Hagar, so she fled from her. Oh, Abram, man. Anyway, that's just rough. So there's more to the story there, and you may know it if you don't. Read on. It talks about how Hagar left, and so an angel of the Lord appeared to her and ministered to her, gave her what she needed, and this angel of the Lord encouraged her to go back to her and submit to her mistress. So by the end of the chapter, Hagar gives Abram a son, and they call the son Ishmael. Let's move on to Genesis 17. Now there's a whole lot in here about circumcision, which we will not discuss. That doesn't involve us, but it does talk about Abram. Talks about the covenant between God and Abram. So let's look at verse 1. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said, "I am God Almighty. Walk before me faithfully and be blameless, and I will make my covenant between me and you and will greatly increase your numbers." Abram fell face down, and God said to him, "As for me, this is my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations. No longer will you be Abram. Your name will be Abraham, for I have made you a father of nations." So it talks about the covenant, and then let's move on to verse 15. God also said to Abraham, "As for Sarai, your wife, you are no longer to call her Sarai. Her name will be Sarah, and I will bless her and will surely give you a son by her. I will bless her that she will be the mother of nations. Kings of people will come from her." So Abram had a typically human reaction. Abram fell face down. He laughed and he said to himself, "Will a son be born to a man 100 years old?" That's a good point. "Will Sarah bear a child at the age of 90? That's an even better point. And Abraham said to God, "If only Ishmael might live under your blessing." Then God said, "Yes, but your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you will call him Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard you. I will surely bless him. I will make you fruitful and greatly increase his numbers, and he will be the father of 12 rulers, and I will make him to a nation. But my covenant I will establish with Isaac, whom Sarah will bear to you by this time next year." So she was 90. 90. Let's move on to Genesis 18. So the Lord appeared to Abram near the great trees of Mamre while he was sitting at the entrance to his tent at the heat of the day. And so Abram looked up from his sitting near the entrance of his tent, looks up, and there's 3 strangers. Now, these were obviously heavenly beings, just from the way Abraham reacted. And we believe that one of these was actually Jesus himself before he became Jesus. But you can do that study on your own. So he looked up and he saw them. We're on verse 3. He said, if I found favor in your eyes, my Lord, do not pass your servant by. And so he's like, let me get you something to eat. So he runs into the tent in verse 6. And he said, so Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah and said, quick, get 3 measures of finest flour, knead it, and bake some bread. And so then he, made some more food, got his finest calf. And so they were eating. And he stood near them under a tree. And they said, where is your wife Sarah? They asked. He said, there in the tent. Then one of them said, I will surely return to you about this time next year. And Sarah, your wife, will have a son. Now Sarah was listening at the entrance of the tent, which was behind them. Abraham and Sarah were already very old. And Sarah was past the age of childbearing. No kidding. So Sarah laughed to herself as she thought, after I am worn out and my Lord is old, will I now have this pleasure? Then the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh and say, will I really have a child now that I'm old? Is anything too hard for God? That's good. That's good preaching. I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son. And Sarah was afraid, so she lied, and she said, I did not laugh. But he said, yes, you did laugh. Well, we can't hide things from the Lord, can we? But boy, she did laugh. She did. So the 3 strangers, they come to Abraham and Sarah, and they say, surprise, you're gonna have a baby. Just like God promised, and she laughs, and you gotta wonder what was in her heart. Was she convinced? Did she, sometimes I've had those things too. Like, I believe it when I see it. You have to wonder. So here we go again. Sarah, apparently at 90 years old, was an incredibly beautiful woman still. So we move on to verse 20. So Abram moved on from there into the region of the Negev and lived between Kadesh and Shur. For a while he stayed in Gerar. And there Abraham said to his wife Sarah, she is my sister. There we go again. Then Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent for Sarah and took her. But God came to Abimelech in a dream one night and said of him, you are as good as dead because of the woman you have taken. She is a married woman. Now Abimelech had not gone near her, so he said, Lord, will you destroy an innocent nation? Did he not say to me, she is my sister? And didn't she also say, he is my brother? I have done this with a clear conscience and clean hands. I apologize. I probably need those granny glasses after all. Then God said to him, yes, I know you did this with a clear conscience, and so I have kept you from sinning against me. That is why I did not let you touch her. Now return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and he will pray for you when you will live. But if you do not return her, you may be sure that you and all who belong to you will die. Early in the morning, Abimelech summoned all his officials, and then he told them that what had happened, and they were very much afraid. Then Abimelech called Abraham in, and he said, what have you done to us? How have I wronged? I'm missing a page. What page is that? 8, 9. Oh, good grief. Have I wronged? I just lost a page here. Oh, good grief. Abimelech brought sheep and cattle and male and female slaves and gave them to Abraham. And he returned to Sarah his wife, to him. And Abimelech said, my land is before you. Live wherever you like. To Sarah he said, I'm giving your brother 1,000 shekels of silver. This is to cover the offense against you before all who are... before all who are with you, you are completely vindicated. Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife, and his slave girls so they could have children again. For the Lord has closed up every womb in Abimelech's household because of Abraham's wife Sarah. Now, I'm going to read a little section to you from my study Bible, and this is concerning verse 2. Said of his wife Sarah, she is my sister. Says, once again, Abraham's faith failed and he jeopardized God's plan for Sarah. God intervened in order to preserve Sarah's participation in the history of redemption as the mother of the covenant people. God in his grace will at times deliver his normally faithful children from situations that are the result of their failure in faith and obedience. So, twisty stuff, I will tell you. As I said, I will let you make the determination of how you think Sarah plays into Abraham's family tree. But obviously, he has put her into another precarious situation. Tough stuff. We're gonna end our story, and we're gonna discuss this a little bit with the big shebang, and about in Genesis 21, she has finally gives birth to Isaac, and names her child Isaac, which means laughter. So Abraham. So there's so much that we can glean, we can think about when we hear this story. The couple of things, God calls Abraham out and Sarah goes with him. She's willing to be taken into households that were not her own, if you know what I mean. I can't imagine her standing. Of course, it's a different time and culture, and we also need to remember that as well. I can't imagine, though, when Abraham is telling people that this is my sis, Sarah, she's not saying, but I'm also your wife, or I am your wife, forget that sister stuff. I would feel betrayed. I would feel like, hey, you're supposed to take care of me in this world. You're supposed to protect those things that you have that God's entrusted with you, and yet you're afraid of somebody killing you, which is a very understandable response. I'm sure he didn't go out every day and want that to happen, but boy, it just reminds us that no matter, sometimes we can do a lot to mess up our own lives. Obviously, you might do some research into Ishmael, some other things. There's going to be consequences. There's going to be within this line, this early line, there's going to be some manipulation and lying going on. So I think, of course, the subject of Sarah being barren, that is something that I've experienced. If you don't know, we waited for our son for 10 years. I had one pregnancy, and I lost that baby. And then we had been married 10 years when he was born, and we adopted him when he was 2 weeks old. So our family grew through adoption, and he is now a he's now bouncing baby beautiful 18. But I know the shame, the heartache that comes along with the feeling that you've let down yourself and your family, and just feeling that achiness and that lack, the anger, all those things that come with it. And there'll be some other ladies along the way we'll discuss, because that's kind of a common theme with some ladies in the Bible, is that they were barren, they were without child, they struggled with infertility. So we're going to talk some more about that subject, but I want to focus primarily, as we end our time with the Bible, about Sarah taking matters into her own hands. And I think we do that a lot. You know, we try and fix things. Even if God has given us a promise, if God has worked things out for us before, it's hard for us to stay steady and just let him work. We want to try and fix the situation. We want to try and fix people. We want to try and fix circumstances. I think the fixing people is probably where we really mess up. How many times have I heard a young woman say, well, I married him because I loved him, but I thought I could change him. I thought I would be able to influence him. No, sister. No, sister. You need to focus on God's plan for you and what you need to do in your own heart. You can't fix anybody. You need to let God work through them. And if it's something that is not going to happen right this second, that is not happening, you just walk away. Walk away. Walk away. I can't do it with that hand. Walk away. Anywho, so the fixing things, the manipulations that we do sometimes, we're going to take matters into our own hands. That's tough. That's tough. I have found myself doing that. I want to fix the relationships. I want to fix the people, their constant going around that bush, when I have a hard time fixing myself. So we have to let go of those things, and we have to trust that God's taking care of it. Hard stuff. Especially. So that is the story of Sarah. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you're still with me. Next week, we are actually going to move on to Rachel and Leah. Now, I know we're going to miss Rebekah. I'm going to touch on her a little bit, which is ironic because my namesake, she's not my namesake, I'm her namesake. I was named after Rebekah. And you can read that story if you want to. Hers is a really good one. But as I said, I'm kind of going to move on a little quicker than that. I want to get as many, I want to make sure I check the box of the ones I think are really interesting in studying. So we're going to talk a little bit of a rivalry situation going on. Some twisty stuff still is headed our way. As always, remember to make sure you check that box if you want to check out my blog for all the goodies. I'm going to let you see right now, though, the recipe for the French toast cups, and I'll see you back here in a minute.
Well, here we go. I'm going to start with a cup of tea today and light a candle. My tea today is glazed lemon loaf. You'll notice that little speck in my cup. Don't worry, that's just a mix-up in the china, a mess-up in the china. So for this recipe, you're going to need 6 cups of chopped bread, 5 eggs, 1.5 cups of milk, 2 teaspoons of sweetener, 2 teaspoons of vanilla, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. I'll have all that below in my description box that you can just print out the recipe. Here I am. I've already preheated my oven to 400 degrees, and I'm going to spray my muffin tins with this olive oil spray really well. This is a loaf of French bread that someone gave to me, so it's plenty stale. You don't have to go out and buy anything special. You can use hamburger buns, leftover, ends and pieces of your white bread or your wheat bread. You really can use anything you have. I've used banana bread to make this. I've used a fancy brioche bread to make it. It makes it really, really good. I have to say that my favorite bread pudding recipe I've ever used, I actually used leftover hot dog buns. And I have no idea why those tasted so good, but they did. So here I am. I'm just making sure it's ready. Now I'm only going to use half of this loaf for this recipe. So you can certainly bag it back up and use it for something else. Freeze it. It does nice croutons or bread pudding. Basically, this recipe is like a bread pudding. There are plenty of French toast casseroles that you can use in big pans. You can use slices like I'm cutting right here, or you can just chunk them up like I'm going to do so for this recipe. This recipe does not have to be, it doesn't have to sit overnight. So this is something you can do, first thing in the morning when you have company. Of course, this is so versatile. you can set it overnight. So I've done all that. Fast forward just a little bit. I'm going to take my pan now, and I'm going to stuff all of the muffin cups right here with the bread. I'm really stuffing them in there. These are going to really fill nicely. It's a Pampered Chef muffin pan, so it's a little bit bigger than a standard size. Now here I'm gonna crack my eggs. Now you see a nice little picture here of my metal bowl. At least you know I washed it. I'm using the same bowl. I just went over there and washed it. So I'm gonna crack all these eggs in there. And what I like to use, oh, here we go. I'm putting a cup and a half of milk right in there. And now I'm gonna start whisking it up, except I'm gonna use a big old fork. It's one of those big old serving forks. I feel I can get a better job, and I'm just gonna start beating the hooey out of these eggs and milk, because I don't want any clumps, because otherwise you're just going to have clumps of cooked egg in your muffin cup. So here I go. This is intense right here. As I said, if you want to use a whisk, if that's your preferred method, you can certainly do that. But oh, look at that nail. That manicure girl needs to get something done there. Okay, so I'm adding sweetener. Now I'm using sweetener because I am diabetic, but you can use brown sugar, you can use honey, anything you'd like. And this recipe is not very sweet, so that's why I like it. A lot of recipes will use a lot of sugar, and I figure you're going to put syrup on it or fruit, and all you want to do is make sure it's. So I've got my vanilla there that's going in. And I'm going to start beating it up just a little bit more again. I'm checking to make sure there's not any clumps. So I don't want clumpy eggs. You see my mess, and you can also see I have no idea what that's called. That thing between my stove and my counter. Sitting here staring at it, I realize I probably need to do something prettier if I'm going to do these videos very often. I will tell you that I recorded the same day I recorded my next video, which is a crustless quiche. So you're going to see pretty much the same background. And here I go. I'm going to now pour my egg mixture over my cups evenly. Now I'm kind of eyeballing it. So, kind of making sure that I start with about a half filled in there, and I go back through and make sure they all have about the same amounts. And then I'm going to kind of squish my bread down there so all of them get nice and covered. Now here's the finished product. This is about after 30 minutes in the oven. You see a few of them have fallen a little bit. It's kind of souffle-ish in a way. And I have set them on a pretty platter. This is something I got at a Goodwill for next to nothing. Love those deals. And there they are, ready to serve and easy peasy. Here we've got some butter and syrup on them, and they were just yummy. So I hope you enjoy this and you are able to use this.
So I hope you enjoyed that recipe for French toast cups. They are mighty good. And next week I'll be sharing a recipe for a veggie crustless quiche. It's got all sorts of goodness in it. I've taken advantage of some of the veggies that have been fresh veggies that have been coming my way, and I hope you enjoyed that. Also, remember, we're going to be talking about Rachel and Leah. I bunched them up there together, and there's a reason for that. So, as always, my friends, I hope you have a beautiful day. Take some time to hug your people. Breathe in, breathe out. You're doing just fine. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.